left Christianity and fundamentalist churches, I noticed that if a church or a religion wants to be taken seriously, they need to have a consistent, reliable, united front. If you Google how many Christian denominations there is just in the United States and in the known world, you're going to come up with a number around 40,000. And everyone I tell that to, they are astounded at that number. And 40,000, you would not believe it. But that's just all the denominations and types of sub-denominations. By sub, I mean they're within an existing denomination, but different. And not all are denominational. Some are without a hierarchy. One of the ones I've gone to, the only one in my life, when I visited my brother in, I want to say Ohio several years ago, was a Vineyard church that's non-denominational, very progressive. My parents and family did not like it. That's not really a surprise at all. But every denomination believes that their way is the only right way. Now, some progressive, more modern, non-traditional churches are more leaning toward, yes, churches are different, but every denomination is legitimate in its own way, and there's more than one way to worship God. There are churches like that. I'm not going to lie and say there isn't. But the biggest denominations in Christianity, Baptist, fundamentalist, traditional, they believe there is only one right path. And anyone who is different, even if you believe one different thing, and my parents have moved 4 denominations, they believe that there is only one way, one true doctrine. This is Calvinism to a T, and Baptist. They don't see any other biblically accurate or just a difference of opinion as just a legitimate thing. They see it as an affront and heresy. And this is what's so dangerous. When you believe that your way is the only right way, this is where MAGA comes from. MAGA stems from fundamentalist Christian religious extremism. So it's not a big of a stretch that religious people, extreme religious traditionalists, go MAGA. I mean, it's just what they do. And I'm not going to make excuses, because that's just the way these people work. In previous videos, I've explained how churches in my childhood, and I've been member of 7 churches, 3 of the biggest denominations, and I have visited a non-conformist, non-denominational, progressive modern church called the Vineyard. And I can't say much about the Vineyard because I've only gone once, and I was still a Christian, extremely fundamentalist at that time. So I was not woke, an atheist, or a free thinker. Like, no critical thinking whatsoever was going on, but it seemed like a very Arminian denomination of church, which is very the opposite of Calvinism. But I can't see anything negative from a religious standpoint unless you're into Calvinism. So, why do churches seem like they have to constantly be at war with themselves? I am not kidding. It is relentless. I've been in churches with 100 people, 150, 500 people, very small mega churches as well. So anywhere from 400 to 700 people. And every single time there was a power struggle. And somebody who wasn't qualified wanted to take over the church or cause a coup. One Baptist church in Alaska, they planted pornography, legal pornography of adults, on a pastor's computer to get him fired. So they will tear each other apart. There are denominations like Baptists that will excommunicate and throw out a loyal, God-fearing, denominational member church if they have a female pastor. Even if they believe everything else that the big Baptist convention does, if you have a female leader, you will be thrown out. The church will still be a church, it just won't be under the Southern Baptist Convention. This is what I'm talking about. They will tear churches apart. They will throw out churches. They will excommunicate churches. Churches will fall apart and war among each other just to be the pastor of a very crappy, low-budget church of 125 people. I mean, compared to Joel Osteen's church, it even exists. It's so small. And there's nothing wrong with small churches. Personally, I found that the nicest, most God-fearing, non-fundamentalist people you're going to find in very small churches under 150 people. But wow, the more people you have, the odds double and triple for churches and their members tearing each other apart. It's the same feeling of coming out as gay or as an atheist, where people reject you for just having a difference of opinion, even if you remain a Baptist or a Calvinist. You can be disowned, shunned. There is no unity. I've never been in a church that had unity. The people in charge, yeah, they were unified until somebody decided that they would look better being the pastor. It did not take long. Either they framed a pastor to get the job and in a position open up that they were not even near qualified for. Or a pastor would retire, leave, or vacate the position for normal situations like caring for their sick parents, moving to be closer to grandchildren, a sickness, and then somebody who was not qualified, who would try to change a church constitution to become pastor. And it wasn't because they loved being a pastor, it was for power, control, and influence. They reveled in being in charge. Now I would call them a narcissist. Churches have never been united. There were churches that were excommunicated all the way back to the 4th and 5th century, where people would get together and decide which books would be in the Bible. There were churches that were excommunicated for having a difference of opinion in one little part of theology. I don't think there is one church, or even all the churches put together, that are unified as a united front. It's us versus them, and even if you're a Christian who believes in God and Jesus is God, the Trinity and the virgin birth, it's not enough. You have to believe all these other things, or you're heretical. My own mother would call Arminian Christians heretical and lucky to go to heaven, even though we all believe in the same God at that time. We just have a difference of opinion how you get to heaven. And by a difference of opinion, I mean, some people believe God draws you. Other people believe that you can find God. Some people have a combination of both. Pre-election, all those kind of things. They will tear each other apart, rip families apart, because somebody doesn't believe in indefensible grace or something. my church and my parents, they all left several churches because they weren't Calvinistic enough. Think about that. And Calvins, they adhere to what I call tulip. And if you want to Google that, I'm not going to go into it because I try not to think about certain things I've escaped from if possible. But imagine becoming an atheist and researching John Calvin, where he set people on fire, Christians who he deemed heretics, who were political adversaries, or God forbid, they believed that people can choose God instead of God drawing them, which is the difference between Arminianism and being a Calvinist. It's very interesting how the Reformation split Catholics and emerging Protestants apart. Protestants would kill Catholics, Catholics would kill Protestants. You can be in the right religion and you can still lose everything and be involved in some of the worst, depraved, disgusting behavior in churches because you don't believe in these things. Being Christian isn't enough. You have to be this kind of Christian. And it's not surprising that religion, it always divides people. It adds an additional layer to just how awful people's lives can be. Secular control is bad enough. You add religion and doctrine and spiritual gifts, discernment, personal, I can't think of the word today. But everyone, especially my family, had personal discernment about things, where if something made them uncomfortable, they viewed it as a sin. And if anyone else did it, they never said it was a sin, but I could sense them judging me. Personal convictions, that's the word I'm looking for. It's not enough to be the most extreme version of Christianity, Calvinism. You have to add another few hundred rules that aren't in the Bible because of personal discernment. I walked on eggshells my entire life because the narcissistic people in my family just couldn't decide which cult they wanted to be in, which denomination. They moved from Assembly of God to Pentecostal, and then Baptist, and then Southern Baptist. Then they moved over to Presbyterian and decided that just wasn't nationalistic and Zionistic enough. So they moved on over to liberal Calvinism, and then they decided that's not extreme enough. We're going to have to drink the Kool-Aid, and then they moved into the most extreme, darkest forms of Calvinism imaginable. You haven't seen dark Christianity like you've seen Calvinism. Honestly, I believe that there is no more evil, racist, sexist, dehumanizing version of Christianity than Mormon or Calvinism in Christianity. I can't think of one. You think Christians believe that they are morally depraved? Calvinism, they believe in the most extreme negative versions of people. It's not healthy. No denomination can be united. They may think so, but when it comes down to it, every church is a cesspool. Whether small or how did we contain this really big cesspool? Every church struggles with unity. I've not been in one church in 30 years that had a senior leadership, junior leadership, and volunteer leadership unity. And the non-senior leaders would plot to overthrow the senior leaders. I'm not kidding when I say I've seen it all. The only thing I haven't seen is somebody killing the other person. That's the only thing I haven't seen yet. Hopefully I never see that. But it's awful what people do. I have seen people, in order to gain influence and authority, use a member's son's suicide as a way to take power and divide congregations. I have seen women shamed for the way they dress in order that somebody can gain power in church. There's no such thing as religious unity. They're all using each other. And they're only united for two reasons. They're all miserable people, or they're biding their time where they can take over, and they're only working with groups of people and denominations in order to achieve their evil agenda. If you can't beat them, join them for a time. They're either trying to get what they want by using other people, or they're just awful human beings. And I'm not saying everyone in a church is awful. I'm saying the environment creates awful people. Not all the time. But you can call it a church all you want. I call it a cesspool for people with borderline personality disorder, narcissism, pick-me, and psychopaths. And I'm not picking on people with borderline. I've met a lot of wonderful, warm people with borderline. There's just something about church where the people who have they lack depth. They have no internal validation. They feed on each other. They're like emotional vampires. Their behavior resembles borderline personality, where they can't find internal validation. So they do sometimes dangerous things to be validated. They put themselves in dangerous relationships or toxic, unhealthy circumstances. They basically survive on the adulation of other people. I honestly believe the majority of people in church suffer from undiagnosed mental or emotional disorders. I have never seen in any other institution except the red pill pipeline that had such emotional issues, personality disorders, lack of empathy, compassion. They're just miserable. They're either miserable people by how they behave, or they stopped living while living because their life is so miserable, they just suck it up and deal with it. They all have persecution complexes. Women will stay 40 years in an abusive, unhappy, miserable environment because they believe they're going to get higher up in heaven for enduring the most unhappy life here on earth. I've not met one happy cis heterosexual woman in any church. I cannot take men seriously in church because they put out the image of being a respectable father and a great leader. But the things I would overhear in church kitchens or in the parlor of my own home where my mother would counsel these wives, their husbands were narcissists. They lived one way. Well, they projected one way in church. And when they came home, except for a paycheck and taking up a chair, that's all they gave to their family. We call it emotionally disengaged. Having to be united in church is a command for people to be united. They can't even do it. They fake it. They're united for a while until somebody creates hell in a church. I've never been in a united church. And I've met hundreds of thousands of people in therapy, and not one of them has ever been in a church that didn't drive them crazy. I had to endure going to 7 churches in 30 years. On the way there, my mother would break down everything that was bad in the church. And when we drove all the way home for 15 minutes, I would have to listen to all the things they did wrong. An interesting fact, the things she said they did wrong changed depending on what decade I was in and what church we were in. She would emphatically say that where we were was 100% the best, most closest, accurate, biblically sound denomination. And then 5 years later, move completely to a different denomination and say the exact same thing about another denomination she had previously ripped apart. There's no consistency. There's no unity. Unity is a threat. If you don't get united, you are kicked out, either as a church, a member, or an individual. Church has always been a pillar of the community because the patriarchy could not and would not survive without the misogyny, the threat of control and punishment from church. And I'm glad to be an atheist. I don't have to be united with anybody. I don't view people, as long as what they believe and the way they live doesn't harm anyone, and their beliefs don't cause pain and doesn't hurt anyone. I don't care what people believe. You can be a Wiccan or a Buddhist. I don't care. But if you believe in things and vote to take away people's rights that are minorities or they're just not heterosexual enough for you, we're going to have a problem. Hopefully, in January of 2029, we can get rid of the waste of space we call DC. The rapists and the pedophiles that live in the White House and try to get rid of people who they claim are illegal aliens. Unless you've been previously deported, you're not a criminal for being here illegally. Because it's not illegal. It's a immigration violation, similar to littering in a federal park. It's not a crime. It's a violation. There's a difference. You're not a criminal for being in this country undocumented. If you're around Trump, you're probably a criminal because Trump likes criminals. And just like the MAGA and the Republican, conservative, troublesome groups of extremism, they're only united because they're getting what they want. The second they don't get what they want and their agenda, however harmful it is, isn't going to happen. You think they would stay unified? They'd eat each other for breakfast. And whatever they're opposed to, 80% of them are doing when no one's around. Trump wants to create a situation where anyone who disagrees with him or supports and validates any orientation, gender, or lifestyle that does not line up with his sexist, homophobic beliefs, he's going to call them domestic terrorists. And I start laughing, not because it's funny, but because 3 out of 4 conservative Republicans are on the down low. So just behaving like a gay man, in 2025, Trump will label you a domestic terrorist. Their own people are doing things that Trump classifies as domestic terrorism. Even though, in America, you can believe whatever you want. You can do whatever you want as long as you don't threaten anybody or cause any harm. But extremist forms of religion always cause harm. They either make you wear Nike tennis shoes, drink the Kool-Aid, hide under a table because the U.S. tanks are coming in. I mean, every decade had a different religious cult. And if something is your identity and controls how you live your life, who you sleep with, what you call your life, what you do, you are in a cult. And religions use cult-like practices. Just because a group of people are united does not mean they agree with each other or that they wouldn't screw each other over if their agenda and their interests aren't being met the way they want. Everyone would turn on Trump if they weren't getting what they wanted. And the only reason people have voter remorse is because they're affected. Anyone who doesn't have remorse before they're affected doesn't have remorse after they're affected. Until it affects them, they could care less. I despise any religion or belief system that cares more about people's sex lives and how women dress and what drag queens do, instead of focusing on people who are hungry, unable to buy food, who need help to survive, people who need access to health care and quality abortion. If you're not focused on the real things, you're part of the problem. And no church has ever been united. They just use each other to forward their agenda, their beliefs, and their influence. Because the first sight of something not going their way, they're going to no longer be united. The United States wasn't even united in the 19th century. That's why we had the Civil War. As soon as it doesn't give people what they want, they're going to stop being so united. There is no gender equality in marriage. Do you think people are united when people honestly believe, secular or religiously, that women are inferior? And if people don't get what they want, and they show who they really are, church or people or even your family, believe it.